You were born with individual strengths and a unique purpose. Don't let fears, false beliefs, or life's happenings diminish your influence. It's time to live and lead for impact. Host Kirsten Ross, expert of transformation, will help you defeat the drama and overcome the trauma that can stop you in your tracks. You'll gain focus, find confidence, and take bold action. Unleash passionate, purposeful you. Let's go.
Welcome to Live and Lead for Impact. I'm Kirsten Ross Vogel, your host, and also your team performance pro, sharing proven, actionable strategies for leadership, communication, and selection. So make sure to follow me if you need any assistance with that. Today's episode, which is number 271, I have an amazing guest. Her name is Melissa Keenan. She helps high-powered female CEOs use their feminine energy as a 10x growth strategy. Her clients produce more while doing less by mastering their feminine CEO. She is a keynote speaker, USA Today bestselling and international bestselling author, and the go-to intimacy expert for business women. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
So let's dive right in and tell me a bit more. Of course, I'm all excited about this feminine energy. So tell me a bit more about the work that you do and what impact that you're working to make in the world.
Yeah, thank you. I think that our current society heralds masculine energy above all else. And I think it's important maybe right out the bat to distinguish what I mean by masculine and feminine energy. We're talking about yin and yang energy. We're not talking about girliness or fingernails or surface level stuff when we talk about feminine energy. Just like we're not talking about being muscular when we're talking about masculine energy. We're talking about energetic principles which have been identified and are at play in every aspect of our lives. So the masculine society that we currently live in and subscribe to is all about achievement, accomplishment, hustling, being driven, being focused. Our worthiness is based on what we can produce, and it's exhausting. It's very exhausting. And where the feminine, on the other hand, is focused more on being, on an essence. It's our approach. It's how we're showing up in the world. And I find these two polarities to be extremely crucial to understand, especially for high-level business women, because we have had to show up in our masculine to make our mark in society. But that can come with some major drawbacks if we don't then understand how to find these other powerful aspects of ourselves to employ in our relationships, in the other aspects of our life to allow us to experience fulfillment. So this is so important to me because I really see like a world where women are very fulfilled from a place of wholeness. There's no compartmentalization. And when women really show up in that whole place, it's like, look out, because we are so powerful. But right now, we see so many women having to just put ourselves into boxes to make our mark that it limits our power. It limits our impact and the mission that we're actually sent here to do and create.
So I love that you brought up relationships, and thank you for the clarification. I think that is really important. I want to kind of test one of my assumptions that I had. And I remember, reading studies about even child's play and all of that. Is this related to like how boys are very different in their play than girls, that girls tend to be more relational and it's not as much about competition, the kind of like, encouraging everyone to participate and work together and all of those kinds of things? Is that related?
It is. And what I always say to those who I'm teaching, and so what I'll say to the audience in this space is never take anything that anyone says, or even myself, at face value. Don't just take it as your belief. Instead, take it in and kind of chew on it, see how it resonates and see what feels most true for you, because this can be kind of a tricky subject. Now we're saying, do yin and yang actually connect to gender? And gender, as we know today, is a very big, confusing, complicated topic. It's my personal belief that yes, This is totally related. It's my personal belief that women and girls have a natural tendency or inclination towards gifts in yin and energy. And men and boys have natural inclination towards gifts in masculine energy. So where do our trans friends fall, or our non-binary friends fall? And I do not know the full answer to that. I know that it looks different for everyone, but I also know that not understanding or embracing these two polarities within us will hinder anyone, no matter what your gender orientation.
Well, and I feel like there's, and so as someone who has been I've been out of the corporate world now for over 20 years, but like prior to that, many years ago, honestly, it was even a tougher time to be a woman. And we weren't even talking about really the differences. It was, back then it was the, you can have it all kind of a thing. And you really there was absolutely this pressure to fully roll into the design of work as it was back then. There wasn't talk about redesigning it or like, bringing in the power of this different type of human. And so I love that you are one. I love the transition that I've seen. I mean, we certainly aren't done yet. There's a lot of work to do, but I mean, there has been progress in the last like 30 years. But I love that you're encouraging people to really learn about themselves and the power and uniqueness that they can bring.
Yeah. And I think the difference between a little bit of what we're talking about here is seeing some changes on the societal level at large. And I completely agree with you. What a relief, right?
Yes.
Now some space for an individual approach. And there's a little bit more space, say, for instance, for emotion in the corporate workplace and things like that. But we definitely have further work to go. But what I'm talking about is bringing it into ourselves. What about in ourselves? Are we actually allowing that space for that duality within us? And what potentially, are we missing out on by rejecting our feminine energy as women? That's the conversation I'm having. How about on the inside?
Yes. Well, and again, I'm only putting it in the place of the workforce because again, there wasn't really room, I don't think, to explore your individuality as a woman. That's kind of how I'm seeing it. Again, like I'm older. And so, so like it wasn't a conversation even to think about or have. It was like, how do you roll in versus how are you unique? What different gifting and energy do you have within that you can bring to the world, whether it's in the workplace or not. But so what experiences motivated you the most to make this unique impact?
A couple of different things. And I always sort of like go, which one feels most meaningful to share, today?
Yeah, take a minute for sure. Which one's resonating today?
I worked, really, really hard in my younger 20s to combat the wounding from a really broken childhood. I went to 12 steps for 9 years. I mean, I feel like I should get a badge. It's a long time to work the 12 steps, actively working the 12 steps, became a sponsor myself and my husband as well. And, lots of therapy and programs and stuff. And so I think that when I started my business, I thought kind of to myself, like, I have done the work to be the person that can hold this container for other people. And I absolutely had the coaching aspect for me and really guiding people from point A to point B in their lives and helping them find that wisdom within themselves, all of that stuff. It has felt like second nature. Like it's so easy to me. But running a business, that side of it was like, oh my gosh. And I thought to myself, oh, it's just because I haven't learned the skills, right? It's like when you first start learning the keyboard, you just have to type and type and type until you get it figured out and it's fine. Or I would tell myself, remember when you had to learn the cash register when you were in high school? You can do this, But as anxiety grew and pressure grew and decisions had to be made, and I went along this path, you reach a point where you realize, wait a second, I keep learning new strategies and I'm still not experiencing the fulfillment that I thought this would bring. And I'm working harder and not necessarily creating the impact that I want to create. Like, wait a second, what's going on here? And that's what started having me unpack, how this shows up for women in business. It was like, wait a second. And I started to realize it was all the same patterns that I had had to work through years before, from a broken childhood, from an almost broken and failing marriage. It was these masculine, feminine principles at play. And I had allowed myself to almost completely squelch out my feminine when I was running my business, and then expecting myself to just, like step out of my office, which is in my home, like the feminine goddess that I am, and think that was going to work. I tried that, right? We're taught to compartmentalize, and that doesn't work. It didn't work for me at all. And then I started getting in conversation with women, like, well, what do you do? Well, I found out it doesn't work for any of the women I know. And now, even working with men, I found, even though like men are better for sure at compartmentalizing, they can't even 100% compartmentalize. Like, a human being is not meant to do that. And so what relief that brought me to recognize, oh, wait a minute, maybe it's not another strategy that I need to learn. Maybe there's actually some principles at play here that I can work to heal within myself. And then as I've done that, how that has changed my experience in business, and then applying that with my clients. I think that was probably where the biggest aha came through, is working with a client, and we're talking about sex in her marriage, and we're talking about fun stuff, that kind of stuff just lights me up. Like, how, her husband bought her gifts that he hadn't bought her anything in years, or how, just things like this. Right. And then to see how it was impacting her business almost without effort. Or she'd come to me and say, I've done less in my business than I have, in years. And I doubled my income. And it was like, wait a second, there is a correlation here. We're not accessing our full power. So I would say those series of events were what had me really shift and hone in and focus on business women, because we have such a big vision and passion in the world. I do too. And then it's like, well, wait a second. I'm being held back. Like, I can't even show up as my full self because I'm over here trying to compartmentalize all these parts of me.
Well, and also, isn't there an element, I know for me, and I'm wondering for you, if you've seen this with your clients. So not only is it like that we're compartmentalizing and not like showing up in full, but also if those parts don't fit our definition of who we think we should be, or how we should be in business, or how we should think or feel or act in business, or in the workplace, that something's wrong with us. Mm-hmm. But then it sounds like when we get to learn about all of the pieces of us and bring us fully in, one, it sounds like it's more effective. And two, we can drop all that.
Yes. That's 100% it. At the end of the day, that's everything. And I think for me, accessing the feminine in myself and supporting women to access their feminine within themselves, that's actually what it's all about. It's just a little gateway, a little doorway that helps us look at it differently and access our true nature, which allows us to release all the shoulds and shouldn'ts, even if they are feminine or masculine or whatever they are, and just show up in our essence and our being. And then the actions that we take are actually inspired based on our being, rather than doing so that we can become something that we think we're supposed to be. We already recognize we are that. We're in that beingness. And then we just take inspired action based from that beingness.
What important work. So this podcast and a lot of my work is all about helping people make their bigger, bolder impact in the world, and helping them remove the barriers. So what a huge barrier it sounds like you're helping people eliminate. And really, it's just about, and it's not so much barrier, but like these compartmentalizations. It's a barrier within. So can you give me an example of kind of one step that someone listening could take to identify like where, what's just a tiny piece of some exercise or a question that you might ask a client?
Yeah. So what I love to guide people to is just intimacy with themselves first. Intimacy is kind of our gateway to our feminine and to that true inner voice. And I define intimacy as into me see. So, right, we can't really experience true connection and fulfillment with other people around us unless we've done that with ourselves. And we can really only connect with others around us to the depth at which we've connected with ourselves. So I would say say to someone, in any given situation, immediately notice what discomfort shows up for you. If you identify a situation and you're like, oh, this feels uncomfortable to me, it's taking a pause, giving yourself some space to feel what that discomfort is. And first we feel it in our physical body. So we can do it right now as we go through this I'll talk you through it, but we can just do it right now. It's like, oh, interesting. Do I notice any discomfort in my physical body? Where do I feel tension? Our body really represents the feminine. Our mind represents the masculine. So anything from the neck down that's communicating to us is communicating from our inner voice or our feminine energy. So
I love that. I was not aware of that. So, I love that little piece, that little tidbit there.
So we access, okay, what discomfort am I feeling? And then we can identify, is there emotion present? An emotion, a feeling. We might not be able to name it, or we might, and that's okay. Either way, we're just showing up with kind of curiosity. So for me right now, I feel a little bit of tightness right above my belly button. That's called your solar plexus chakra. And I think the emotion probably is like nerves, right? Like doing a podcast interview, there's a little bit of nervousness. So then I give myself permission to feel the feeling. This is so important. We always want to skip this step. Everybody says, oh, I'm good with feelings. I feel my feelings all the time. We don't. We actually really don't feel our feelings. So it's a matter of literally getting curious about the discomfort, sitting with it, getting still, noticing the quality of the sensation. Like, is it hot or cold? Is it tight or loose? Just being with it. And we do this because our emotions, our body are trying to guide us to create the life we want. We don't realize that about emotions. Doing this into me see work, there's a point to feeling your feelings, because our feelings are a compass, are a roadmap that point us to what we deeply value. So we ask ourselves in that space, what is it that I deeply value? If we're feeling discomfort, likely there's a value that's missing in our current situation. So even for me just now, I got a little vulnerable, right? I said, okay, here's where I'm feeling the tightness. It's probably like nervous. I feel nervous, a little nervous there. And then I go, okay, what value, what's deeply meaningful to me that's missing right now? And for me, it's probably acceptance of myself. Right? Like a little nervous, like I just need to do a little bit of work here for a moment to say, Melissa, I totally accept you. You're going to do a great job. And then automatically I feel this like, oh, I feel so much better.
Oh, good. I was kind of holding my breath there. I was like, I hope I'm not doing anything.
Oh, you're so
feeling comfortable. See, there's my little my little vulnerability.
You're a little nervous, right? So, and it can help to have a values list in front of you. You can just Google that, or you can come to my website. I've got a values list available. But what do you think, if you're willing to go there? You kind of felt a little nervous too. Oh, she feels nervous. Now I feel nervous. Value do you think that emotion is calling you towards? Something you deeply value?
Oh my goodness. Well, I don't know what, I have not seen your list or a list of values, but I know that I really want people to feel their best, and I want to provide the space for that. And so it was something with, is there something I'm doing that is creating, barriers to you feeling comfortable in your best? Cause I would not want to feel that way. So I don't know what you would call that.
Maybe there's like a confidence in the container, right? Or a security in the container that you're providing. Those might be some of the value words. So, but isn't this good, right? As you start to sort of question that and you break it down, it guides you to what you deeply value. And what you deeply value is like the guidepost for how to create the best life you want. So that's just the little step. Now we just went through it. I'll just break it down quickly. Notice discomfort, pause, feel it in your body. See if you can identify an emotion, feel it, and then ask yourself, what value is present for you?
I really like that. And I'm always connecting to other things that I've learned in the past. And have you heard of EMDR, which is a form of, it's like counselors do that. Yeah. So it's for PTSD. And so I've gone through some PTSD EMDR stuff. And the reason I'm attaching it is, and I'm going to ask you, does this make sense? But when you're doing EMDR, you're thinking about past kind of traumatic experiences. And then you're re-experiencing the emotion of it. But also I've had huge physical reactions in my body. And so I guess to me, that tells me if you're not dealing with it in the moment, your body's remembering, which there is a book called Your Body Keeps the Score that is all about. But is that part of is that resonating with you? Is that?
Yes, 100%. So that's like the surface level tool, right? And that works some of the time. Sometimes we have to go a little deeper because there's trauma or there's a trigger buried in there, right? So we have to actually go to some of those past experiences and go, oh, wait a minute. I know I'm feeling this way because it's just like, when I was 13 and my uncle said this to me and then right?
Yes.
So we do that. And we can even ask our inner child self, okay, let's feel that feeling. And then we nurture that younger self. And then we ask her, what value would you have wanted to experience? And cultivating those experiences as an adult, in the pure spirit of nurturing on, loving on your inner child is literally the best self-care that exists on the planet. It knocks, your bubble bath or whatever out of the park. For instance, one time I had a friend, I had shared with a friend a trigger that had come up and some different things. And I was like, gosh, and I realized it was this piece from my childhood and whatever. I was working at the time on becoming a yoga teacher. I was nervous like crazy about it. And it, triggered some childhood stuff. And I had to go do this first ever, what do you call it? Gosh, it was like an interview, but you had to lead the owner of the studio through a yoga class, pretty much just you and her. And it was so terrifying. She was really tough. And my friend sent me a yoga generation doll. These are these little girl dolls from Walmart. And she's got a yoga outfit on. And I'm, 25 at the time, right? And I had never received such a sweet gift in my entire life. You wouldn't believe as a grown woman how excited I was to see this doll in the mail. Those are the kinds of beautiful things that can unfold from, even being willing to go deeper.
Well, and I think too, so I love that you talked about sometimes that emotional reaction that you're having, it might be bigger or different because of, it's a trigger. So there's something in your past. So being able to understand that. I know when I talk to people about their emotions, I do kind of share sometimes, again, I kind of want to have a conversation with you to say, have I been right the way I've been sharing this? Because I always say our emotions are just like you said, our emotions are really important. They give us important information. They help keep us safe. We should listen to our body and our intuition and all of that. But there are times when an emotional response might not be related to the thing that's happening in that moment. I mean, maybe it's you're hungry or you're tired, or it is this trigger from a past. And so we don't necessarily want to, and again, correct me if I'm wrong though, but we don't necessarily want to immediately take action based on a feeling. You kind of have to observe it and take a look at kind of more for yourself initially, and then see if there's action to take.
Yes, totally. Which is why we go to what it is that you value rather than going immediately to action, right? If I acted on every time I felt mad, that would obviously result in disaster for me, for my team, for my family. I probably could still work on that with my children. Let's just be honest. But, but that's why we go to what you value, because how we then go about what we value. This is tying back to what we had said earlier, all this stuff we're doing in our being, right? We're feeling the feeling, we're allowing it, we're being compassionate with it. Maybe we're even allowing ourselves to go to, oh, wait, is this a trigger? And what might it be a trigger of? And oh, yes, that's what it was. Maybe we're doing some journaling with it, right? This is all happening in our being. And then we get to the value, and the value helps then guide the inspired action that we take. There's a million ways for me to experience, what was the value I said? Acceptance. I wanted to experience acceptance, right? I immediately went to the strategy because I've done this work a million times, right? The strategy for me was telling myself, hey, you got this, Melissa. I accept you. No matter what you say on this podcast, Like, I accept you. That was my strategy. But how many other strategies could I have employed to experience acceptance? So many, and now you can see how like this could benefit so many people, right? If you say you're having a tiff in your marriage or your partnership, and this is what comes up, I just really want to be accepted. It's like, oh, well, how can you get that? Yeah, I can do it for myself, but actually I'd love to hear my partner, maybe I want to ask them, like, can you tell me the things that you love about me, or why it is that, you said yes to me when we first met, or can you, whatever, right? We can bring other people into our strategies. We can even, there's just so many ways then that you
Yeah,
can.
I love that. Yeah, because right, we can look and like test the waters, think about like, is this something that I can give to myself, or do I need to? And I always use the word request versus ask, or, because it's not a demand, it's not a dictation, it's a request, which just has that softer. But so, yeah, at times it sounds like it really can help you gain clarity about what you need so that you can make a request if there is someone that you need it from.
And I even lead as a business owner this way. So with my team members, I actually will lead with feelings. I'll say, I felt very confused when this task didn't get accomplished. I felt very confused about that. And what I'm really hoping to experience in this is clarity. And that's why we're having this conversation. So you hear how I just weaved in my feelings, my values, and right away, people are off the defense because I just shared my feelings and what I deeply value. And then we can just go about creating solutions together.
That's great. So tell me, as you built this business, what was the biggest internal or external challenge that you had to overcome personally, and how did you overcome it?
As I built the business, I think that probably the biggest one was the initial decision to take it really, really seriously. I had done coaching certification, and I mean, anybody who's been in this world knows that you can take a lot of coaching certifications. That does not make you a business owner. Right? Like a hobby.
Doesn't even always make you a good coach.
Yes, exactly.
Saying nothing about you, of course. Like, I can tell you're a good coach.
Thank you. So I had done the coaching certification, and then it came time to make a decision to invest in their level 2, the program I was going through. And the certification was $2,500. Level 2 was $10,000. And my family and I were on food stamps and Medicaid with 4 kids. And it was like, it literally felt like the most impossible ask of our family to be able to invest $10,000 into a program. I was literally in trauma. Like, I was shaking. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't sleep for days. Like, everything was hinging on this decision. And I remember one night I couldn't sleep. I finally just got up. It was like 2 a.m. and I went and got in the shower, and I was praying, and like, I am so tired of all this. I can remember the feeling, just like, I'm so tired of this like mental weight of this decision. And how am I going to make this happen? My husband was so sweet. Whatever you feel like you need to do, we will absolutely support you in your decision. And it felt like there was just darkness all around me. Like, I couldn't see anything clearly. And in the shower, I'm praying and I'm in this state. And it felt like this, almost like a lightning bolt of clarity just came through the center of it all. And I remember I could still feel like the darkness was just, all I had to do was just reach out and grab it, and it would come right back in. But I felt this peace that was like, this is what you need to do, Melissa. And you've known it. It was like you've known it your whole life, on every timeline that exists of your life. You've known this is what you're supposed to do. And so I was like, okay, and made the decision, called my coach up the, next morning, because it was still like 3 a.m. or whatever, and told her, okay, I don't don't know how we're going to do this. We're going to do it. We put it all on a credit card, and I worked my butt off and made it back and more in the 6-month program that I was in.
Wow. That is very inspirational. And the relief it sounds like that you had in that moment, gaining that clarity, boy, it's such a difficult time when I call it limbo land, where you're on the precipice of making this big decision, and you continue to be undecided. So, the current state is not the yes, but so what is going to be the yes? And then as soon as you take that next step, the energy and all that brings, that's amazing. And so tell me how you stayed on track during that 6-month program, and how you, what happened after that moment, other than calling your coach?
To be honest, I think the first year of running my business, I felt like an infant, and I had referenced this a little bit earlier in our conversation, but I really just I was in full on teach me mode, right? Looking outside of myself for all the answers, all the strategies and stuff. And in many ways I needed that, because I didn't know the strategies. I had no idea how to run a business. It was insane. And so I just worked really hard, tirelessly, learning how to do business and what to do. But in the process, like I said, I also sort of squelched away my feminine. And I would say it wasn't until about maybe a year and a half ago or so that I realized, oh my gosh, this is just like the journey of like that we go through in life, right? Like I feel like life, we're born as a child and we're in that space too. Like, just teach me. We're looking outside of ourselves all the time for the answers. So we don't have the answers. But then we reach a certain point in our adulthood where we realize, dang it, I was so much wiser as a kid. And we spend the rest of our life unlearning all the things, right?
Well, we get all the fears and all that stuff standing in our way.
Yes.
It's like, I want the tenacity, not the fear, but the knowledge.
Yes. So that's kind of, I reached that same point in my business of like, oh my gosh, but there was this gentleness and this, heavy emphasis on caring for people, not caring so much about the numbers or the, right? Like this childlike approach that I had towards my business. And so then I began to really reintegrate that feminine piece back in the last year and a half into my business, into my day-to-day. And it's been a really beautiful and so interesting journey, because still, even in the internet world, right, where you can do it however you want, it still feels like so much pressure to do it the way that whoever they is, say that you have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it can feel like such a lonely road as a
Right.
business owner. Yeah.
So it's like taking the learning and then figuring out how it, like, select the things that fit with who you are, and say no to the things that don't, but having the courage to do that, and the wisdom and the self-knowledge to be able to understand what's going to be a fit.
Yep. And then, along that whole path, so for me, it was not losing that integrity in my relationships. So before I started my business was, like I said, when my husband and I had worked so hard, and our whole motive was to just create a really beautiful marriage, to just have that peace in our home and have that connection and that intimacy in our relationship and our love with each other and with our children. And so I'm so grateful that I had done that work before I came in as a business owner, because that has caused me to constantly, that's my anchor. That's what I keep going back to. And that's my gauge. Like, oh, I can see I've stepped out of integrity because I feel very disconnected, from my husband or from one of my children or from my own sex drive. Like, that's where my gauge is. And that's why I'm good at this intimacy work.
That's great. So tell me, what words of wisdom do you have, which you have shared so many tips and strategies and so much wisdom already, but I want to give you the opportunity to share some words of wisdom to others who are listening, who are maybe just on the beginnings, just starting on the path of making their own impact in the world. What would you tell them?
I think the number one thing is grace with ourselves.
Mm.
I came into this journey with this understanding that when you follow your heart, it's always going to be a tumultuous journey that's going to come with extreme highs and extreme lows. And it's going to be like an adventure, like what you never could have expected. And so along that path, if you're trying to do that with control and perfectionism and all of that, like literally that pressure can crush you. But if you go into it trusting that your heart will always guide you back to the right path, even when you stumble here or there or veer way off, eventually your heart's going to nudge you back and it's all going to be okay. And you will 100% make big mistakes and have, failed investments and all the things, because every single business owner who has ever been a great business owner has to go through those things. But that grace for yourself, just recommit. Why did I do this? Like, what excited my heart about this from the beginning? And then come right back and your heart will guide you every time.
Oh, so important. Yeah. And don't waste energy on beating yourself up about those missteps or the errors or all of that. Just take the learning from it and then, yes, get refocused and keep moving forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Yes. Grace. That is the perfect word for the day. So I hope that everyone who's listening is taking notes and writing that down. The word is grace, because that is so important. And also I would say not only like our own missteps, that bright shiny object thing or whatever, but where are there people that are sometimes kind of bumping you off the path where, maybe their motives aren't aligned or they don't totally understand what you're doing or all of that. So being true to yourself and realizing that no one else is in your shoes and has the exact same perspective. So have those good boundaries too.
Love that. Yeah, that's always been surprising, but truly that little stereotypical thing that they say about, the more successful you grow, the more, haters you acquire. It's fascinating. It's like, what? Like out of nowhere. It really is a thing. And so we get to just like love people, and Ho'oponopono is my favorite right now. In grace. Thank you. I love you. I forgive you. I'm sorry all the time.
That's awesome. Yes. There's something that's uncomfortable for them in some way, and it doesn't have anything to do with you, likely.
Yes.
So, well, thank you so much Melissa, for everything that you've shared today. You've given so many tips. So I want to make sure that everyone knows how to, because if you're listening without taking notes, I know you're going to want to come back and listen again and be able to take notes. So, and also at the show notes page for today's episode, we will have notes for you too. There'll be a few notes and the links to connect with Melissa. So to get to today's show notes, you can go to defeatthedrama.com, click on the podcast tab and go to episode 271. And there we will have the link to Melissa's Facebook group, her website, which is melissakeenan.com. And again, we'll have a few notes from today, but I'm assuming that you're going to want to listen to this again and definitely be taking notes.
It's www.melisakeenan.com.
So, well, thank you, Melissa. And if you need some additional assistance too with your team growing and you're scaling your business, I encourage you to also go to myimpactacademy.com/join. You can get 2 free weeks. There's tons of content there, PDF downloads, videos, audios, all the things organized by key topics and strategies that you need to be successful as you're building your business or working with family. So eliminate that friction so you can make your bigger, bolder impact. You also get time with me every couple of weeks. So thank you, Melissa. Again, it's been amazing. And I can't wait to see what else you do in the world.
Thank you so much, Kirsten.